This is the Crit RPG Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Welcome to the Crit RPG Podcast, a podcast where we support smaller indie authors. And speaking of which, with me today is Void Herald. You may have heard of him.
Thank you.
It's great to have you on the show. I know this has been a little bit ad hoc. We talked, I think, 3 days ago, and I asked you just on a whim, like, hey, do you want to come on? And you said yes. So thank you. How are you doing?
Well, very fine. As I said, I'm currently in Malta, etc., with a very good summer term. I'll go abroad to meet with some authors, which is something I've been looking for years, exchanging with people I discuss on the net and finally trying to meet them in the flesh.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, because even if you can create, some very powerful bond with people you have been exchanging for years, etc., with message, etc., it's still always different to see the person in the flesh, to do activities and, actually shake hands in the real world. So that's in the personal life. I'm pretty fine. I just finished my one of my stories, Apocalypse Tamer. I don't know if you have been informed about it.
I haven't been informed that you finished it, but I have been aware that it exists. It's still on my to-read list.
Oh, okay. But I just finished it. And that's why, I launched Commerce Emperor and I launched another story next week that I finished it and then I moved on to my current projects.
So you want to keep releasing stories until every single story on Rising Stars is yours? Is that the plan?
For Rising Stars, that's I admit I no longer truly understand how that thing works because they change the algo every few years and I had like 3 of my stories that they got shafted because of the growth algorithm.
Oh yeah.
So far, it seems to be working fine. So it seems I have finally shed the curse I had on that front.
Actually, that makes me ask. I mean, you've been on Royal Road for longer than most people.
I think I've been there for 4 years. Yes, 5. I think it started in 2019. I think.
Okay. Do you want to talk about how that came about?
Yeah, sure. To give details, I started to publish professionally, like original work of my own creation. I was inspired to do that by Wilbo, the author of Worm. He's like one of the pioneers of the web fiction space. So I was inspired to write my own stuff. I started on blogs. But writing on blogs is very difficult because writing stuff is only like 20% and the 80% is spent trying to market your blog to try to get people to see it or in search engine or the like. And in the end, I found Royal Road. I don't remember exactly why I found it. I think I was doing some research on website. I really liked the interface. It really felt professional and useful. And I started publishing on it. And eventually, first story didn't work too much. It was something called Magic Online. A bit too overambitious, trying to do too many things at once. But I refined my craft. I launched Vanker, which worked well, and the Perfect Run. And I am on my 9th story, I think.
A 9th story in 4 years?
In 4 years, yes. I think I do like one or two players.
That must be nice.
But I have a quick pace. If you want, a reader of mine actually sent me one of the trilogy I've written, Keros. And, when you compare the size of what is only like a trilogy, a 3 book out of 19 that I have written, like it's one of the 9 stories I have written on Royal Road so far, but its content is the equivalent of 3 books that are on Amazon. When you realize that these are just like something I wrote like 9 months or so, and it's only 3 books out of 19, it puts into perspective how much was we professionals author produce each year, I think. You compare with people like Shortaloon or Zogarth produce like 5 chapters a week. If you had all of it in paper format, it would put into perspective the sheer amount of words we produce.
I think if you put all those words into paper, I think it become like a weapon that's illegal to carry in Texas. So one thing I did notice, though, is that most of your novels, especially The Perfect Run, are still very, very high on best rated on Royal Road. How much time do you spend editing your stuff?
A lot. Actually, I had that conversation on my forum recently where someone asked me how many words I wrote per day. And I answered I feel it's a bit, not say it's an immature question, but it's something that's misguided because, like for Commerce Emperor, my current story, the first chapter is like, I think it's 700 words, 7,000. But, it's like the 5th version of the draft. It started as an isekai. I wrote it as in a modern day, and right now it's a pure fantasy story with a native protagonist. I mean, protagonist from that war. So, even if I say, okay, I write like, I don't know, an arbitrary number like 3,000 words or 5,000 words, it doesn't really represent the actual work because a lot of my writing style is a bit like iteration, like I create a first version, then I rededicate it into a second, then a third, and until I'm satisfied with the content, so to say. So yeah, I try to focus on quality. I had some issues with Tamer, which I went through in the last notes, is that with some of the recent stories, I kept a very strict schedule, like 3 chapters each week. And many times I felt I was only producing a chapter because I had to produce a chapter on that day. Okay. Rather than because I was happy with the results. Okay. And I think it caused quality to suffer a lot. And I'm currently trying something of a new schedule with my current stories where I release chapters only when I feel it's complete. And I feel quality has improved a lot. I think that's a very good point. Web serials in general do feel like they feel because they have this scheduled. You have to get stuff out. I originally started publishing my own stuff because I wanted to keep writing and I wanted people to force me to keep writing and not stop. And to stop being a perfectionist about it and release all my stuff. But I definitely can see where you're coming from because I still go back to my older chapters and go like, this doesn't work at all. I wish I could edit this right now. I wish I could chop out this part in the middle and then start it again. I was actually wondering if you first finish the book and then publish it in like small chapters. But I think your schedule, the way you say it, makes sense. If you're a big shot, I think that's actually pretty valid strategy. I will just first rebound on what you said earlier and answer a question. But for I think there is like a right middle ground between like having a schedule that creates accountability and trying to work on chapter quality. Because even if I say okay, I release one chapter when I feel it's finished, I still try to produce at least 1 or 2 chapters a week. That makes sense. At least a minimum threshold to not fall into complacency. But I feel that every author has like a minimum hotspot, they know they can produce that many chapters a week without too much effort. It's like, the minimum they can do. And having someone that forces you to stay accountable is one of the good side of website writing. I completely agree with you. I've done experiments. When you have like an outside pressure, it's much easier to force yourself to work than if you answer only to your own conscience. But when the schedule becomes too much in quantity, at one point it just becomes creating quantity because of the outside pressures, and it's when it starts being a problem, and it's an issue that some authors I've discussed with faced in the past, they had to scale down because they put too much pressure on themselves because they don't want to disappoint their readers. And it's very, some of them, they're afraid of losing Patreons or the like because there is a financial aspect to take into account. But it also threatens their mental health and well-being because at one point they no longer enjoy writing their own stuff. As creative people, you can't really separate your mental state from your work. And of course, the opposite, some people can produce 5 chapters a week, no problem. And they're fine, creating quantity. Each person is different, so but it's the question of trying to finding an equilibrium between your accountability and the number of chapters you produce.
So Shurtledoon
Mm-hmm.
talked about this too, right? He actually mentioned that in one of his posts on Reddit, that he increasingly became burned out because he felt like he had to push out those words. That's not a good thing. And you do produce better stuff that will actually get you farther if you are calmer. And if you actually enjoy what you're writing instead of it feeling like a slog. I actually very much respect your approach of having a story, finishing it, and then starting a new one instead of having one story that goes for ages.
Thanks, but it's still very risky move to do what I do. With Short, I perfectly understand his position, but I think that still a lot of readers in the web novel and web production space, they're not as much interested in like quality stuff as a story that is part of their daily routine. It's a bit like those TV series, that go on for like 400 episodes with an episode a day. It's more about something that they that resonate with or to what they become emotionally attached. Just compare, my Patreon numbers with some people who have been writing stories for like ages. When you write story for like ages, you become part of the daily life for people, and they subscribe to your Patreon for the long term. It stays for a while.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, when I finish a story, I have to prove myself all over again with the next one. So it's wide swings in number of followers, and like if you're in it for the money, I would actually advise against what I'm doing, because clearly there is more money in like doing a work that goes on for a very long time and publishing each day, etc.
Yeah.
Than finishing stories and then moving on to the next one, like what I'm doing. Because in that case, you may lose some of the older audience and you have to prove yourself all over again, etc. Only a very small fraction of readers, I feel, follow the author. So most of them, they follow the story. To give a very extreme example, look at Harry Potter, Harry Potter's writer, J.K. Rowling. Like Harry Potter is a media juggernaut, but when she published Police Story, it gets some success based on her name and quality of her work, but it's nowhere near the huge marketing juggernaut that Harry Potter was.
I think it is that Rowling wrote something completely different. The other counterexample I would have is, of course, Brandon Sanderson, where people keep following his stuff. But okay, actually, he's writing one giant book, The Cosmere, right? So I definitely see a point, yeah.
Brandon Sanderson, yeah, I would say that it's a very special case because all of his work are in the Cosmere universe, and there's the same genre. Like he's not, he hasn't moved from like fantasy to police or science fiction, like with the exception of still art, I would say.
And in Skyward.
Skyward, I don't think I have read this one.
It's How to Tame Your Dragon, but with a spaceship.
Okay. But still the point remains that like 80% of his book are fantasy stories set in the same multiverse. So it's not really making wide swings like J.K. Rowling or what I've done. Like I've moved from a story of dragon with his sidekick in a fantasy world to a post-apocalyptic sci-fi superhero story. In this case, the jump paid off, but when I moved that forward, to a dark fantasy, a bit more gothic, I lost a lot of people from one to the other simply because of the genre change. But I'm glad you enjoyed it, and for the question of Len and stuff is that a lot of the work I've done was either partly inspired by my own experience or like things that happened to friends or and that the feeling of like you're trying to reconnect with a friend that you have lost sight of for a while, and you realize that in the between years they have changed, and the relationship as well may not be live up to the old expectation you had, etc., is something that I think a lot of us have gone through. When you, I mean, part of the perfection is that when you strip it of all the superhero and sci-fi, etc., what I wanted to write there was like, there was someone struggling with loneliness and depression, like, the inability to connect with others because of his ability or his lifestyle. It's something that I have personally struggled with as well. This the sentiment of solitude or etc. So I think that's why it resonates with many people, including you, is that this emotion or something that I think we've all dealt with at one point or another in our life. And to go back to what you said about overly RPG, it's because many of these stories as well, they don't really establish a character, a personality beforehand, because the character, the viewpoint protagonist, is usually like someone who is transported from Earth to whatever planet this is, and it serves as a stand-in for the reader. It's easier for the hero to relate to the character when he's a blank state. When you give him a very strong personality, so sometimes that rubs off people. Like, I have many people who tell me that, they don't like the perfection simply because Ryan's personality rubs them the wrong way. So,
on the other hand, reading a good book is like making a new friend. That's why you're sad when it ends, because you will never see that person again, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a gamble in it, without like wanting to brown nose, but I think you really did it super well, like especially in the perfect one. And I also think like towards like as Vainker really grew, that was also like something really special for me. Kind of going off on a tangent, I guess, but
yeah, but that's tangents that create interesting discussion. So
exactly. What's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer?
I wouldn't say I've really ever gotten advice as a writer because I never had a mentor or anything. But there is an experience that really stayed with me and still influenced my writing today. Have you ever read Naruto, the manga?
Yeah, I have.
When I was young, putain, I feel like an old person when I say that. I'm just 29. When I was a teenager, I was really focused on the Naruto manga. And another manga that I followed was Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, yeah.
So two stories I was very much interested. And when I was like super interested in Naruto, I felt like, it reached its peak like 213 and that it should have stopped there. But it kept going, for a while until I lost, I wouldn't say I lost all interest in the stuff, but it really reduced my more enjoyment of the thing. I read a lot of content that, like the author wanted to stop at one point, but the publisher wanted to milk the co, so to say.
Oh no.
A bit further, so he carried on longer than he should have. And I compared that feeling with what I had when Full Metal Alchemist finished. Like Full Metal Alchemist was finished on a high note. There was no, it was much shorter than Naruto, but it finished. It was like a success from start to end. And it really informed my philosophy that, ever you stop something when you feel it's good, like, everything has a lifetime, where it's good. And if it's like milk, you can keep it in the fridge and it's still good. But if you try to keep it up for like month or something, it's going to get bad. And it does influence my writing. Like I feel like I prefer to finish stuff when it's good and so that it stays forever good. Like it stays in memories in a good way. So that than continuing to write something beyond what should be its life expectancy and till it turns into a zombie like The Simpsons or something. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think many people actually know this. Even people who are like very, very high up in the stratosphere of lit RPG, they can make like more than a good living out of this. But chances are, if you're reading a story on Royal Road, then it's probably the case that the author that you're following would really appreciate your money on Patreon if you have to spare it, because it's a very tough job.
It's a tough job, yeah. And Personally, I can only write as much as I do because of the kind support of my patrons and readers.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to, a lot of authors, they write their story on the side, which they must keep a main job.
Mm-hmm.
And I count myself as lucky that I managed to make writing my job, but a lot of people, they have to struggle between like writing on one side and keeping their main career on the other. And of course, helping them is going to make a difference. It means like turning a passion into a career.
I mean, many authors out there put the information out, and if you haven't read it a lot, you've probably seen AMAs, and you will know that most people are getting by on what is pretty much minimum wage. And those who aren't, they have like a full day job, like you said.
Mm.
It's kind of unsustainable at times, but at the same time, you're doing it because it's fun. And if you're doing it because it's fun and you're not falling into that trap, and here we are again with emotional self-control, then keep going as long as it's fun. Because if it stops being fun, then you don't owe anyone anything.
I completely agree. And I will say something more is that we're fortunate to live in an age where, you have things like Amazon, etc., that makes it much easier to live off writing.
Yeah.
Because I've discussed with people from Hachette, the main publisher, a few years back, which is one of the biggest publishers ever. And some of the authors, even if they sold a lot, because like the company took 90 or 95% of the royalties between the libraries, the paper, etc., they still had to do side gigs on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Things like Amazon, Patreon, etc., they make it much easier for an audience to support you, because to even earn from more than the minimum wage in writing, in traditional publishing, you need to sell like lots.
Yeah.
Very 100 times what most of us publish, just to get like a minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
And we're fortunate to live in the current era where you have tools that let you feel free of self, so to say.
Comparing, for example, I think Patreon takes like 17% or 19%, and compare that to the 90% that big publishers used to take, you would never, ever, ever be able to out-earn your fans.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is one thing that you have learned while writing, or that you've improved on significantly, and that you would love to go back and improve on your older works?
It's actually something I've tried to do with some of my works. The main thing is that I've realized that if you do too many things at once, you don't do any of them well.
Okay.
I think a story is like a bullet,
Mm-hmm.
It works, it goes farther and it goes deeper when it's optimized.
Mm-hmm.
You don't put in superfluous thing and you just focus on one point. But, and if you try to do too many things at once, it just ends up misshapen. And that's something I've done with, my first work, Magic Online. It's something I tried like a lot of stuff. It was a story about, rebellion on Earth. It had some, it element. It had the color system that I would later refine in the Perfect World.
Mm-hmm.
It had lots and lots of characters. It was trying to be too many things at once.
Mm-hmm.
And it floundered under the weight of all the stuff.
Yeah.
And, but in time, I took like specific aspects of that prototype story, the color system that ended up the Perfect Run, the factions that ended up going to Apocalypse Tamer, etc.
Oh, cool.
And once they refined it, it works much better.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I would tell my older self is like, don't try to do too many things at once. Focus on one aspect of the work, and it will work out better that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, staying focused. I agree with you. However, if you are writing for fun and you just want to see how much stuff you can fit into a story, go ahead.
Yeah, but I would advise against that, because if you try to fit too much stuff, you lose track of it, and it's like, putting too much weight on yourself.
Absolutely.
Maybe you can carry a lot, but eventually you get crushed and you stop. It's not a good experience. It doesn't help you progress too much.
That's true. I think I'm saying that from a coaching perspective, where I would say, well, go ahead and do it. You're not going to die from it, and you're going to have a good experience. But on the other hand,
the more I grow older, the more I think that people learn by experience.
Exactly.
you can give them all the advice you want, unless they have personally experienced it. It doesn't always fully resonate with them.
The only thing I would recommend anyone is doing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I had that conversation with Selkie, who is the author of Beneath the Dread on His Moon.
Mm-hmm.
And he said some things that, like Nike, the company Nike, its slogan, just do it.
Yeah.
It's still the best thing because it's better, to just try it out and learn from it than like waiting for the perfect opportunity, because no opportunity is always going to be perfect enough for you. They also say that a lot of people that I see were very good and could be like professional writer. Our friend was about like, I think 5 years on a sci-fi series, which is very good. They kept telling him like, but he thought, try out on Amazon, see it can work, but it doesn't because it's never perfect enough, or it's just waiting, for the perfect opportunity. And the result is that nothing is done. And, his work sits on a shelf and, unknown to the world.
Mm.
And I think that a lot of people are like that. They say, okay, I'm waiting for the perfect offer, the perfect people to notice me.
Okay, so what's one new book that you love and why is it awesome?
So far, I've been currently reading the Scholomance series by Naomi Novik. Which is a quiet, it's basically like a deconstruction of Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
That studies what life would actually be in a magical school that is besieged by monsters, and where you have like the class system and all the economic and personal inequalities that you have outside the world that bleed into the education system.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the issues that you have today with education, like only people from rich or wealthy family or big cities, they get a quality education because their parents can pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
With a lot of people, even if they technically go to the same school, they didn't have the same opportunities or support, etc., and they struggle a bit more. It's a very, I think, interesting vision of the school system. It's one of the series I enjoyed a bit, even if sometimes I feel the main protagonist is not my cup of tea. The protagonist is a bit like, we'll say, a tsundere. Sorry to say that. So, sometimes it's a bit too much, I think, but generally a good book, in general. I credit Mechanimus Jiwa, which is the author of Journey of Black and Red for suggesting it to me. And otherwise, another book that I was really impressed by is the fifth season. By Maxime. It's a trilogy of books like the fifth season, the Stone Sky, and the Obelisk Gate. I don't know if you have heard of them. It's incredible, and all the more because it's written in the second person, like a you.
Oh wow!
I was super impressed by the writing style, the world, and the universe that was developed. It's one of my top fantasy books. A Song of Ice and Fire from J.R. Martin. It's same level of craft for me. And it's finished. It's a full trilogy, so if anybody want to check it out and it's good.
A finished fantasy series in 2023. What are you talking about? This is impossible. Have you read The Lies of Locke Lamora?
Nope.
I think you would enjoy that. It's 90% witty banter. It's a heist story in a magical Venice.
Okay. I'm actually a big fan of Italy, and like I've been to Venice as well. It's one of a very good memory. It's my experience with Italy that really inspired the perfect run, etc. So so something in the fantasy Venice, I think I will love it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lies of Locke Lamora. Okay.
So that brings me to the question: what do you have against Monaco?
No, I actually like Monaco, but it was how to say that. I've had a lot of running at one point in my life. I went to Brussels, because my background before I went into writing was in law, and originally my goal was to work in the European institution. Until I actually met the European institution and I saw the bureaucracy. I'm still a European. I think that you need to have a strong Europe, and one of the best things that happened to the continent in years, but there is some room for improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
At one point, I met people that were like, micronation guys, people that tried, to buy a small piece of land and say, okay, this is my nation. This is like an independent country with its own passport, etc. And I just had, like that idea of like a small like North Korea country, which is like run by some nut job. Is at war with other small micronation because nobody else recognizes him. The message, the ideas that was in my head, and that really influenced Monaco because, like in Monaco, the perfection. For those who don't understand it, Monaco basically became a pocket dimension where it's run by some other force, that is completely insane. And you have a lot of calls where you say, okay, we're at war with San Marino and Luxembourg, the very small countries. And that's one of the things that really inspired it. And I think I picked Monaco because Monaco is actually, one of the countries I don't really hear a lot in fiction. And because it's basically like a small city like Luxembourg. And I just like, the ambience of the Monte Carlo casinos. It really felt like, like a small island of this in a very tax-heavy France right around it. The mind works in mysterious ways sometimes.
You do seem to like your casinos. The start of your new novel is also set in a casino, yeah?
But yeah, because I feel like casinos are a microcosm of the human nature, like the addiction to risk. The first scene of Commerçant Pro, you have the main protagonist that kind of discuss with someone about probabilities and the fact that, the person isn't actually looking to win money. They're just, trying to beat the horse because out of narcissism is an observation I had with real gamblers. They're not really, trying to win money, etc. They're just trying to find the perfect secret that nobody else has found, and which I feel is a sign of narcissism and obsession. But yeah, I like casinos, so I don't gamble or anything. It's not a way to earn money, etc. But it really feels like, a microcosm of human natures, and it's a thing where you can see a lot of people for what they really are.
For many people, it's not about the money anymore. It's about winning. It's about the dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. It's I feel a lot of people, it's less or sunk cost fallacy. They've invested so much that they don't want to lose on it.
Yeah,
casinos are more about pride than greed, I think.
Getting to the last segment, and that is shout outs.
Calculating cultivation. It's been just pointing it. It was an economic story, so it's not going to be for everyone. Like as I said in my review, you barely have any prose or character, etc. But for me, who likes economics and building, etc., it was quite interesting. And for shout out, I would say I recommend the stuff from Jiwa or Mechanimus, who has written A Journey of Black and Red and the Calamitous Bob. He's a good friend of mine, and he's been working on a new series as well on the side. He's not going to eat railroads before a while, I think, but he's check his stuff. It's good.
Shout outs from me too. I listened to Journey of Black and Red while I was on vacation in Chicago, and I just walked through Chicago, listening to that story. It was really good. It's not a lit RPG, but it is a very friggin' good story about, a vampire lady in the 1700s in southern states of America.
Yeah, it's it may not be the average railroad lit RPG or cultivation stuff, but it's good.
Okay. I guess for other recommendations that you have, people can always go and check out your reviews. You got 5 reviews.
A review stuff, that I think is, that really moved me enough to actually write about them. Yeah, maybe I should do that more often.
I saw you like Tower of Somnus.
I was midway through the second book, but I haven't picked it up again in a while.
Funny enough, Tower of Somnus and The Perfect Run are the only 2 RPG books I've recommended to my dad. So you're good company, I guess.
Okay, perfect. I really need to get back into it. It's been a while.
Okay. With that being said, I think this is pretty much it. If you've been listening to this so far, you probably already have been aware of our Patreon. If you would give me money on Patreon, I would really appreciate it, because that would make me be able to produce more stuff. All this recording equipment and all the subscriptions to several audio hosting stuff is not that cheap.
I was about to say a joke like I should take a commission or something, but
Oh yeah, and of course, I also need to bribe Void Herald.
Okay, just click on the affiliate link at the end of the podcast. I respect your attempt, to create a podcast and give a voice to different authors. So yeah, support this man.
Thank you so much.
But it was quite a pleasant interview. Yes. So if you have more questions or content, you can forward them my way.
Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope to see you next week, where we're going to be talking to Mystic Neptune and Jolly Jupiter about their cozy fantasies. It's about beer and tea and biscuits. Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Bye.
All right, well.